Today on Notsam Wrestling, what does 2026 have in store for Gunther? Cody Rhodes gets aggressive. MJF is back. Austin Theory is the masked man in this. This is Notsam Wrestling. Welcome to Notsam Wrestling. Happy holidays, but who needs a holiday from talking about pro wrestling? We've still got things to discuss, and we will discuss them, but I hope that as we're discussing wrestling, you have your earbuds in while you're hanging out with friends, family. Maybe you got to see in-laws that you don't want to see and you just can't wait to get back into the car to turn this back on. Whatever we can do to help relieve any stress that you may be feeling, because the holidays, they're a beautiful time. We're going to have a lot of specialty programming going on over the next 2 weeks. Of course, we're going to keep doing the pod. You know, we're not taking any weeks off the podcast, but on top of our usual programming, next week, I'm going to be doing a 2-part special called, the 12 moments that made WWE in 2025. And what that is I'm kind of taking the 12 moments that tell the story of what WWE was in 2025. And over the course of 2 podcasts, we're going to be able to kind of talk about those moments and what they meant to what was the greater story of the year. On top of that, I almost don't want to announce it because I'm still working a lot on it. And it is a lot of work, but I've been working on it and I'm going to continue to work on it so that we can get it done. I am working on a 4-part series on the career of John Cena. I'm planning this week on dropping the story of John Cena in 4 separate parts, going over his entire career in WWE. Everything that he did over the span of his 23 years. 23? 02 to 05? Yeah, 23 years in WWE. So that will hopefully start this week, and it will run each day. We should have part 1, then part 2, then part 3, then part 4, which will run the last year and change of John Cena in the WWE. So hopefully that'll get up when I want it to get up, and you'll all enjoy it. I can't wait to hear your feedback on it, but we've got a lot to talk about in terms of what's going on right now. And as we look ahead, and we'll do this more next week as well, going into 2026, you've got to believe that Gunther is going to be a big part. Last week, we spent a lot of time talking about Gunther beating John Cena, the way he beat John Cena tapping out to him, and what this means. You know, from the moment that Gunther was in the tournament, there was controversy. Gunther winning the tournament, there was controversy. There were some that thought that Gunther was not the right choice. There were some that thought that Gunther was not this guy that everybody thinks he is. There were some that thought Gunther should not beat John Cena. There were some that thought Gunther should not tap out John Cena. But all of it aside, and the moment aside, because I think that's what you have to do ultimately, is separate the moment from the greater story. Because there are multiple examples of moments being sacrificed for the greater story. Now, if you're not able to properly execute on the greater story, well, now you've sacrificed a moment for absolutely nothing. And that sucks. But I don't think, based on what little we know, that that's what we're seeing here. The fact that Gunther comes out on Raw and has the aura and gets the reception that he got walking into that arena on Monday night in Hershey, Pennsylvania, I think that tells you the whole story. By the way, there's not going to be any spoilers on this podcast for Raw and SmackDown that have already been taped. I don't read the spoilers. That's not what we do here. But there was so much, and it wasn't this Roman Reigns coming out on Raw after WrestleMania 34 and getting booed because he wasn't being accepted, and Roman kind of standing there and accepting them. It was Gunther coming out knowing exactly why he was being booed, intending to get booed, and laughing at everybody, not just enjoying how much he had ruined everybody's day, but enjoying the fact that they were all completely playing into exactly what he wanted out of all of them. It really was a sight to see. And I'm hopeful that this continues on, seeing not only Gunther come out, right, and get booed and booed and booed, And then he cuts a real brief promo and gets booed and booed and booed, and they're cursing at him, and they want his head. And then he leaves, but then he comes back and he needs a little more. He puts his arms back up, boo, boo, boo. And then he leaves, he gets a little more. He comes back for thirds, puts his arms up, boo, boo, boo. But this is it. This is it. He realizes, and this is true, that Gunther, we talk about Cody Rhodes, and one of the strengths that I think he has possessed throughout the last several years is that in a world where traditional babyface heel roles were kind of not in style anymore, Cody was able to be a traditional babyface and get the reaction that he and the WWE wanted across the entire audience. Now you're seeing the same thing happen from a heel perspective, that people are booing Gunther because they don't like Gunther. They're going to buy tickets because they want to see somebody beat Gunther. It's an amazing thing to watch this happen. And he goes back for thirds, and he gets booed, booed, booed. And then Gunther, as he's leaving, he's getting glares from everybody. He goes through Gorilla. Nobody talks to him in Gorilla. When he leaves Gorilla, comments are made by Otis and Tozawa. And when comments are made by Otis and Tozawa, not only do they say them right to his face, but he doesn't look at them like, oh, you want some too? Oh, you want me to do to you what I did to John Cena? No, he just laughs it off. These people are beneath me. And then R-Truth stops him, and R-Truth calls him a piece of trash. And he laughs off R-Truth. But R-Truth is not having fun with this at all. He's not laughing whatsoever. R-Truth is a serious R-Truth that hates what Gunther did to John Cena. And on commentary, you got commentary saying, hey, this is Gunther. Everybody's booing him because of what he did to John Cena. Not because he beat John Cena, but because he humiliated John Cena. He did to John Cena what he did not have to do. Making John Cena give up like that, that's something Gunther did intentionally. And we know then that can all be backed up because Gunther said on the way there, the way I did to LA Knight is the way I'm going to do to you. I'm going to make you give up. And that to me is why it is so important that John Cena tapped out. That to me is why people that say he should have just fallen asleep and he wouldn't have had to give up and we would have preserved the never give up mentality. Yes. But then the whole second part of that story where Gunther is a real slime ball because he took it too far isn't part of the story anymore. A giant portion of that heat that Gunther has, the hatred that fans have for Gunther, is not there anymore because it's all based on the idea that he took it too far and that he took steps to humiliate John Cena and force him to give up that he didn't have to do. Commentary said it, and that's why the other wrestlers that were glaring at Gunther on his way out were glaring at Gunther on his way out. Nobody's going to be mad at Gunther for beating John Cena. When you go into a wrestling match, theoretically, what we're all watching, what we've all suspended our disbelief to see, is two people trying to win the match. But when it's John Cena's last match, to go out of your way to make him give up, and that's the story that Gunther was telling throughout the match as well. With the clotheslines, check him. Clothesline, check him. Ask him. I want him to quit. I don't even want to pin him. Like, that's the story that leads to Gunther having this level of hatred thrown his way. It doesn't work the other way. What are they going to do? He's going to come out and go like, yeah, I know you didn't want me to, but I beat John Cena. It's not the same. It's not. And R-Truth calls him a piece of trash. And then Adam Pearce says, I think it's best that you leave. He calls him an a-hole. Gunther says, I was going to leave anyway. He doesn't care that everybody hates him. And then there's AJ Styles waiting for him at his car just to give him that look, just to make eye contact. And Gunther flashes one of the worst you can't see me's at AJ Styles as Gunther drives away. It was a fabulous segment in identifying Gunther as to who he is now that he's made John Cena give up. What it also did was, because you had commentary explaining why people were so mad at him, and because you had the locker room going, we are all against you now. Adam Pearce going, we are against you now because of what you did. All that heat that was on like Triple H getting booed and WWE and booking and all this stuff that is, that was getting blamed for the decisions on John Cena, all of that heat now gets transferred over to Gunther. If you have Triple H appear on screen after Triple H was getting booed like he was at the post show, then what you're doing is there's only so much energy. There's only so much negative energy that you want. And what you're going to do is you're going to give it, or at least a chunk of it, to Triple H if he's out on TV taking any credit whatsoever for the John Cena loss. And you can't, because the whole reason you did that was to put Gunther on a different level. So what you're doing now is you're having Gunther go through all of this so that all that energy is put right on Gunther's lap. And of course, people are now asking, like, what's next for Gunther? What do you do with Gunther? With all this energy, as I said, put on Gunther. John Cena said it himself. He expects by the Royal Rumble, everybody will have forgotten about him, and that's the way it's supposed to go because everything moves forward. So everything John Cena did in that final run, the last year that John Cena gave us, according to him anyway, the intention would have been to do all of this so that it can push things forward next year. And everything you do this year is to push things forward next year. And so on and so on. That's how the business stays healthy for as long as it can possibly stay healthy. So what does Gunther do next? I mean, of course, a lot of us are thinking, okay, Gunther being the machine that just retires people is amazing. I think as soon as he beat John Cena, you had a lot of people bringing up Brock Lesnar. He beat Goldberg and John Cena in the same year, retired both of them. Brock Lesnar is a name that comes up. Brock Lesnar beat John Cena. John Cena brought Brock Lesnar up in interviews. Like, why would Brock Lesnar beat you like that? Well, to make it a bigger deal when Brock Lesnar is a part of the WWE in 2026 and when he eventually retires. And whether John Cena had said that or not, Brock Lesnar is of the age that has to be around the corner. So do you have Gunther go and retire Brock Lesnar? AJ Styles staring down Gunther. Do you immediately go to AJ Styles avenging John Cena? AJ Styles, who has said 2026 is his last year in wrestling. And you have Gunther beat AJ Styles. I mean, I think that you could have Gunther set up an elephant graveyard of careers. I think Gunther collecting the dignity of superstars on their way out. And you can even spin the real-life Goldberg stuff into something that Gunther gets credit for, right? The idea that Goldberg was not happy with the way that he went out, and he did all the interviews and everything about it. Well, now Gunther can own that and go like, Goldberg didn't want to go out that way. I made it happen. You guys didn't want to see John Cena go out that way. I made it happen. So in the words of the great Bill Goldberg, who's next? And do you go with AJ Styles? Because on my list, really, in terms of retiring before too long, you have AJ Styles, you have Brock Lesnar, you have Rey Mysterio. I mean, Rey Mysterio is doing amazing things right now, but you got to believe he's going to retire before long. You have potentially Chris Jericho coming back to the WWE, and I would imagine if Chris Jericho comes back, it would be for a retirement run. Is that on Gunther's plate? I would think CM Punk, while maybe not this year or next year, within the next 5, is going to be gone. Who knows? You know, Roman Reigns talks about wanting to do stuff in 2025 and 2026, but he doesn't really talk much beyond that. Who knows where Roman Reigns' head is at? You know, there's a generational shift coming. Is Gunther there to be the guy that cleans everybody out? It's possible, but it also at a point feels predictable. You want to be able to sit there and go, okay, Goldberg might actually beat Gunther. And while nobody really wanted him to, and most people thought Gunther would win, there was at least a conversation to be had. Like, we know Goldberg has won matches he shouldn't have won in the past. We know Goldberg has won the WWE Championship when none of us really wanted him to win the WWE Championship. Is there a world where he wins the World Heavyweight Championship? Yes, there is. By the time we got to Saturday night's main event a couple of weeks ago, or a week, whatever it was, a lot of us wanted John Cena to win. Is there a world where John Cena wins? Of course there was. He doesn't. But the further you go down that road, the less possible it is for these wrestlers who we know are retiring to beat Gunther. Because at this point, why would you have a wrestler who's retiring beat Gunther? Why would you do that? And if that's the awareness that we all have, that becomes a more and more difficult scenario to put forward. And I think that there's still room for him to do it. But like, I think Rey Mysterio, if he's going to retire anytime soon, it should probably be Dominic that retires Rey. I don't think Gunther needs to have the monopoly on retiring people. And besides that, I don't think that that's what you want Gunther to be known for. I don't think that you want Gunther to just be the guy who wrestles guys in their last matches. I think you want to now, because there will be no bigger last match than John Cena. Even Gunther retiring Brock Lesnar will not come close to Gunther retiring John Cena. Gunther retiring Goldberg does not come close to Gunther retiring John Cena. Gunther retiring AJ. So it's almost like, do you really want to get retired by the guy that retired John Cena? Because you'll never have top billing on that list. It's never going to happen. There will never be anything bigger in Gunther's career than Gunther retiring John Cena. It's not ever going to happen. So if that's the case, do you want him retiring everybody? Or do you just want to take this character and go further with it? Now, in day-to-day WWE, you know, I think what's really interesting to me is the idea of getting to Gunther versus Cody. I think the idea that it's like, okay, we want to find matches that people think Gunther might actually lose. And that's going to get, as I said, more and more difficult. Gunther versus Cody is one where you go, oh, I see. Cody got the torch passed to him from John Cena. Cody needs to get revenge on John Cena. Cody is the guy now. Gunther is the unbeatable force. Cody gets to beat Gunther. At the same time, what if he doesn't? I think if you're going to do Cody versus Gunther anytime soon, Gunther's got to win that match. If you're going to do Cody versus Gunther in 2026, I want to see Gunther win that match. Because why did Gunther beat John Cena? So he could do stuff like that. You know, there's a world where Gunther's the one that takes that title away from Cody Rhodes. And then Cody's got to rebuild like Rocky. But Cody doesn't rebuild to come back for Gunther because Gunther can't be beat. You know, for me, I go, okay, and I was letting my brain wander with this thing. But whether you do Gunther versus Cody or not, I think that you've got to spend 2026 building Roman Reigns. I think that people are kind of done seeing Roman Reigns not win matches. As much as everybody was tired of Roman Reigns just beating everybody, we all know that that was the best. And you could say it wasn't. You could leave it in the comments. Sam's, glazing again. I'll glaze. That's one thing I will do. But I think that Roman Reigns beating everybody. I mean, when you go back now, I was watching some John Cena promos, right? And I was watching John Cena and Roman Reigns go back and forth before their SummerSlam match in the Tribal Chief era. And it was just like, man, it was good. Roman was good, man. And I think that we're ready for that Roman to come back. And can you imagine if WWE were to spend, starting now, 2026, rebuilding Roman Reigns, get a title back on Roman Reigns, whether it's the World Heavyweight title, whether it's the WWE title, and they build and they build and they build. Can you imagine getting to SummerSlam, say? Because I want it to be at least 6-7 months. 6-7 months. Can you imagine Roman Reigns gets back to his peak and you've continued this run with Gunther? Whether it's Gunther as the champion and Roman wants to get his title back. Like if Gunther beats Cody at WrestleMania and then Roman goes for Gunther at SummerSlam. Like, and you're sitting there now and going like, yeah, well, Roman has to get that title back. Roman has to beat Gunther. I mean, I feel like a rebuilt Roman Reigns versus a still hot off of this end of the year Gunther for a championship in the main event of SummerSlam is a money match. Because you will have Roman Reigns in that babyface spot and you will have Gunther in that heel spot. And it will be a match like we haven't seen before. I mean, those are two matches that I really want to see in 2026. Gunther versus Cody and Gunther versus Roman. And I want to see Gunther versus Roman later in the year. Let's not forget who Gunther is. You know, people, they'll pretend like we all didn't love Gunther. We loved Walter. We loved Gunther. We loved Walter so much that when they renamed him Gunther, we were all worried. What they're telling me is true. And as it turns out, it made him even better. We loved him through Imperium. We loved him through the NXT UK run. We loved him through the Intercontinental title run. Gunther rules. And now you've got the opportunity to completely unleash this guy. I mean, I feel like you could take this for a couple years if you do it right. I think that Gunther, and the reason why I want him to fight Cody Rhodes, and the reason why I want him to fight Roman Reigns, is because I want to build this guy like crazy. Because I want Gunther to be the supervillain to the next generation. Having Brock Lesnar to build Roman Reigns, to build Cody Rhodes, to an extent to build John Cena, but I think John Cena also helped build Brock Lesnar. But like having Brock there to eventually be able to build Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes is a massive thing for people like Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes. And you didn't see it when Roman was the big dog, but the matches that Roman had with Brock as the tribal chief put him on another level. The matches that Cody had with Brock put him on another level. I think if you spend a year with Gunther, Gunther can be the one, low-key, tearing down the old guard. And that wouldn't be the story that you're telling, but it would be, in effect, what's happening. And it would be preparing the next generation to step up. Gunther becomes the supervillain to the next generation. And the guy that finally beats Gunther is not somebody who's at the top of the card right now. I mean, I think 2026 ultimately is going to be about two things. Building Gunther as that supervillain, or I want it to be about two things. Building Gunther as that supervillain and creating that roster of next-gen talent. Dominic Mysterio, Carmelo, Trick Williams, Theory, Javon Evans, Oba Femi, Braun Breaker, Ilya Dragunov. The list goes on and on and on. Even if you look at what's going on in NXT with LFG and everything, the NXT recruits and the people being trained to come up to NXT are younger than ever. So that by the time they hit 25, 26, you can get them up to the main roster. And you can build these stars. And there's all this potential here to build these stars. And having a supervillain like Gunther for the tippity top of those guys, if you use it carefully, is going to pay out in dividends, man. You're going to have to let the investment set. You're going to have to, hold. Now sell. Wait until Oba's ready. Wait until Braun Breaker's ready. Wait until Dominic Mysterio's ready. And you're going to be able to replenish, because it's not so much worrying about replenishing the depth of the roster. It's replenishing the top of the card. And when you have a top of the card that has Cody Rhodes, CM Punk, Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar, all simultaneously, all interacting with John Cena. I mean, Logan Paul I could add to the next gen list. Like, you're going to have to, in short order, replenish the top of the roster, which is ultimately, and this is why everything is cyclical, the story of John Cena, the story of '02, when you needed Brock, Randy, Batista, John. You needed all of them to step up and step up quick, because that top of the card needed replenishing. And you had guys like Hunter and Shawn and Kurt Angle to work with this younger talent and put them on a level. And I think that's what you'll have with Cody, with Roman, with Punk. And you can get to a place where we look at the young guys that we see now the way we looked at the young guys that we saw in 2002, 2003. And not everyone's going to work, because if you go back to 02, 03, 04, 05, you got a lot of guys that a lot of steam was put behind, and then it just didn't work. And they disappeared, and we don't even remember their names. But for the ones that it did work for, Brock Lesnar, Randy Orton, Batista, and John Cena are all household names. All of them, all four are household names. I mean, two of them are Hollywood stars. One of them is a multi-sport athlete. And the fourth one might go down as the greatest overall pro wrestling performer of all time. That's what you want to repeat. And I think that you've got people in place now, like Gunther, that you can actually do it. Speaking of Gunther and John Cena and all of that, John Cena was on Cody Rhodes' podcast. What do you want to talk about? So John Cena did his first post-WWE run interview, and I was happy to see that his clothes were talked about a lot, but it was not because he was in jorts. I do have the last in-gear John Cena interview. He did do a jorts interview on Pat McAfee's show. He was not wearing his knee pads. And, by the way, the gear that he wore on Pat McAfee's show was not actually the gear that he wore in the ring. The sweatbands were different. The wristbands were different. It really doesn't do it at all. For me, I had the last in-gear John Cena interview on Raw Recap with Megan at Madison Square Garden. So I'm not saying, throw me a parade, but I'd show up if you did. So let's talk about John Cena on Cody's podcast. He did give us some insight into a couple of questions that we had, mainly about the smile, the way the match ended. John Cena talked about, that first of all, in the most John Cena way ever, and I actually like that he does this. He talked about how ultimately, what does the smile mean is up to you. It's an artist, an artist makes the art, but it's up to the people consuming the art to give it meaning. And that's, I'm paraphrasing. Those aren't his words, but that is true. I've loved that we've been able to have as many conversations as we've been able to have about the way that John Cena match ended. I was at the Busties, much to Becky Lynch's chagrin, at the end of last week, and Bill Apter was there, and we just started talking about the John Cena finish. He was asking me my opinions. I was giving it to him, and he took out his camera, and he was like, "Wait, let's talk about this." I mean, it's everybody has an opinion about it. Mine just happened to be right. So he said for him it was about kind of the way I interpreted it, which was like knowing that you fought with everything that you have and that the character's dying. Like, it's what I said, which was people show up thinking that they're wanting to see Die Hard, but not realizing this is Old Yeller. And it's time to put the old man down. Time to put the old dog down. That's all we can do. It wasn't, Last Action Hero, which, by the way, that movie slaps. It was Marley and Me. That's what we were going to see. And Gunther was that awful vet. Anybody that's had a dog knows you always have to go through it. But it's like looking around, realizing your loved ones were all there, he said, and going, yeah, I did it. I did everything that I could, and being satisfied with what you did. And I think that, like, if you listen to John Cena's interviews going into this thing, if you kind of analyzed and thought about the year-long run, this was the way that it had to end. He kept emphasizing how it's going to be over, it's going to be over, it's going to be over, it's going to be over. How do you guarantee that something's over? You kill it. And he killed the character. And that's why he's in bright red suit pants on Cody Rhodes' podcast. Because wrestler John Cena is no longer with us. He said, of course, the stuff about The Rock and Travis Scott came up again. And John is big on not giving into hypotheticals. He's done it on multiple interviews now. Like, yeah, what was supposed to happen, what could have happened. He goes, things change all the time. And the last thing that I'm ever going to do is live in this space where I'm thinking about what could have happened as opposed to what did happen or what is going to happen. And he talked about how, yeah, that wasn't where we thought it was going to go. But it gave us my match with Randy. It gave us this match. It gave us that match. And that's all true. And I tend to live that way as well. I very rarely think about how things could have gone differently if they had gone differently, because they didn't go differently. So what difference does it possibly make? It more becomes, well, look at what I made out of this. I didn't know it was going to go this way, but man, did we execute. That to me is where one should take pride. But I think from a fan's perspective, John's explanations of Travis Scott and The Rock become difficult. Because while, yes, we know and we believe John when he says, as long as he's been in the WWE, creative has constantly changed. Creative is changing all the time. And he said, just because somebody said this is where we're going to go, doesn't mean it's where they go. And he can't count the number of times that that's happened, which is all true, I'm sure, and all well and good. Except in this case, it happened in front of the fans. In this case, it was fans going, wait, you told us the beginning of a story. And the beginning of the story that you told us was one of the biggest beginnings of the story of all time. You could make, the way you made a documentary about the build to WrestleMania 40, you could make a documentary twice as long about what really happened with the John Cena heel turn. I don't think there will ever come a day where wrestling fans are not utterly fascinated by this, and I think they should be. I think that it's a conversation that we'll be able to have forever. I think it was, because then there's implications that this was just done for a moment, to have that moment. And you go, yeah, but there wasn't any thought into what happens next? When we do fantasy booking, I'm asking, okay, and then what? There had to be some kind of thought into what happens next. And if there was a thought into what happens next, why didn't that happen? And what was supposed to happen? And what was there a plan B? Was there a plan C? These are not questions that are ever going to go away. And I think as fans, we're completely entitled to ask these questions because it was presented to us. It wasn't a rumor. If you had told me that there was a rumor, there was a dirt sheet that said, at one point X, Y, and Z was supposed to happen, but it didn't. And then you ask somebody about it and they go, yeah, I guess that was supposed to happen, but I don't even know. That's fine. I think that that's perfectly fair to go okay, we're not going to get an answer on that. But when we see the beginning of this story was happening and we don't know here's the questions that you have. Okay, this story happened. When did you really decide to do this? And why? Why did you decide to do this? What was the immediate plan? Meaning, what were you going to do the next night? And who was going to be there? Was there a plan for The Rock to continue on? And if there was or wasn't, why was he never addressed? Was there an idea for the soul, Cody's soul, John Cena's soul to come up in this? And if not, why or was this not ever addressed? Clearly, there was a thought of having Travis Scott continue on. Was this going to happen without The Rock? And was that ever going to be addressed? And at what point did Travis Scott really not become a part of this thing anymore? And why was that never addressed? You can't, once it's presented on television, you can't just not address things. In a movie, it's like the loaded gun theory. If in the first scene of a movie, you see, they tell you, look, here's a loaded gun. By the end of that movie, somebody's got to fire that gun. Otherwise, why did you do that in the beginning of the movie? And we have every right to then leave the movie asking those questions. At Elimination Chamber in Toronto, that might have been wrestling's biggest loaded gun that they've ever presented. And then they kind of moved on and said, well, why are you even asking about it? Which, I don't think that's going to make people stop asking about it ever. They got a moment, but I think people are forever going to keep asking. And I think that's a question for everybody involved in WWE creative. I think that's a question for John Cena that is never going away. I think that's a question for Cody Rhodes. I think that's a question for The Rock. I think that's a question for Travis Scott. I think that's a question for everybody. And I would love, here's what I'll say. I would love to get each one of those people, everybody involved, get them all to come over and sit in the basement with me. I'll put together a whole montage of everybody's different perspectives. And I'm sure everybody has a different perspective and everybody has a different way of seeing it. And it won't be until we get everybody's perspective that we can fully unpack and go, okay. And then we'll analyze it and have our own opinions. But we probably won't ever get everybody's perspective. And there's a good chance that it'll just end up being one of those mysteries. speaking of Cody Rhodes, we have a much more aggressive Cody Rhodes on SmackDown. So Cody Rhodes first, he beat up Drew McIntyre in Drew McIntyre's car. He showed up at Drew McIntyre's house. I love a tape where the wrestler goes over. I like when Triple H and Randy Orton fought in the house. Austin showing up at Brian Pillman's house. Dominic showing up at Rey Mysterio's house. Everybody showing up at everybody's houses. Love that. Randy Orton going to Bray Wyatt's haunted house. Cody Rhodes going to Drew McIntyre's house. I love that everybody in Florida has those glass rooms too. They look like a really beautiful version of the sunroom that they used to have at the Wendy's. Remember those? Those were great. So Cody shows up at Drew's house and beats him up. And then he shows up on SmackDown and Nick Aldis says, look, because of what you did, Drew McIntyre is claiming an unsafe work environment, and he's right. Not that he's legit, but he's got ground to stand on. Nick says that Cody Rhodes is not above the law, and that if they can get Drew back, one of the stipulations is going to have to be that Drew can't be touched by Cody Rhodes in the build-up to this match. And Cody, which I wasn't expecting from Cody, points out to Nick Aldis, I'm QB1. He said, Nick, did you forget who you're talking to? I'm QB1. I'm the guy, he said, and he brought up the tweet. He said, I'm the guy that sent the tweet that changed the game. I am the law. And I don't work for you. I work for the fans. And don't you forget, you work for me. And I'm going, yeah, Cody Rhodes, own QB1. Own your status. Own the fact that you're the guy now. I loved this side of Cody Rhodes. And the fact that Cody Rhodes, because look, when everybody was all sunshine and roses about WWE, Cody Rhodes being that guy was great. But now that there's that kind of disconnect at times between fans and perceived corporate, Cody doesn't want to slip into being this corporate champion, because then he becomes big dog Roman Reigns. Then he becomes, 05, 06, I'd say 06, John Cena. Cody still wants to be the man of the people, because that, I think, is something that we can't forget, that Cody is a man of the people, that Cody is self-made, that Cody did it his way. Cody did it the way that we all want. But it's been years, and we forget, and there are new fans that come on board. We forget these things. And Cody being there to remind us, I think, is important. Cody, at some point, is going to have to go back to that old AEW promo. I think his last promo in AEW, where he talks about CM Punk's pipe bomb and says, you talked about it, I lived it, I did it, I executed it, I changed the industry for the better, for the wrestlers, for the fans. I think that to revisit that story is a really good thing, because hopefully, if it's effective, it reminds everybody of the foundation of this Cody Rhodes character and why he's so popular. Part of Cody's story was that he was coming back to be the guy, which in and of itself was cool, because number one, it was his story and his goal. And number two, nobody had ever done it this way. I think that Cody talking the way he was talking on SmackDown can kind of shift the perspective of, I'm being the company guy, because that's the other thing. A lot of sort of the conversation nowadays about being champion ends up going like, yeah, and then you have to do the media, and you have to do the appearances, and this and that, and blah, blah, and be a soldier and everything. And I don't know if fans want that. I think fans, they know that. But I think it's like, just be our guy, dude. Don't tell me how much is on your plate. Don't tell me how much you're doing for the company. Talk to me about what you're doing for me. Talk to me about the stories that you're telling in that ring. Talk to me about the bad guys that you are dismantling. And I think that that's where Cody's going with this. Cody's reminding everybody that he's there for the folks, and that there's nothing that a general manager or anybody else can do to him to stop that from happening. Now, there is a part of me that wishes that when Nick Aldis makes this, because Nick Aldis goes, you can't touch Drew if Drew comes back. And Cody goes, or what? I'm the guy. Which, again, I love that attitude. Nick goes, well, we'll strip you of the title. I do wish that at some point a stipulation like that would be made and they would get stripped. Like the champion would lose control and the champion would get stripped. Because you never really see that. But that's not to say I want Cody to lose the title. I just think it'd be interesting. But, you know, I do think that it adds a new element to Cody Rhodes, which is good, especially right now, leading up to WrestleMania season. And I think it's going to get really interesting because I think Cody's going to do everything in his power to make sure that he still stands out as the top guy. I don't think Cody takes anything for granted. And I think Cody is watching the fact that Roman is rebuilding. And this is in real life and in story. It's all one and the same. That Roman is rebuilding, that CM Punk is a world heavyweight champion, that Brock Lesnar is back on the scene, that Gunther has now been elevated, that these young guys are coming up now quick, gaining a lot of interest, that Seth Rollins is going to come back bigger and better than ever once he returns from his injury. And it's like Cody needs to make sure that he stays in that spot. And I think that that's what it's going to be all about. Speaking of where Cody came from, MJF returned on AEW. MJF came back on Dynamite. This is 2 weeks before World's End. And he was old vintage MJF. He came out and he slammed Samoa Joe. He slammed Samoa Joe for doing the same thing that he always does, which, by the way, I love. He slammed Samoa Joe for what Samoa Joe did at World's End. And I did enjoy, and I was talking about this on the radio show too, I did enjoy that, I would say that MJF's peak was probably All In. The first All In England. And then the drop started happening after World's End. And a lot of that had to do with Adam Cole and the Devil story never really paying off. And the fact that nobody in Long Island wanted to see him lose the title. But MJF, and this is going back to what we were just talking about Gunther, about the heat that is surrounding the John Cena match being transferred over to Gunther by doing things in storyline. MJF assigning that heat that we all as fans recognize to Samoa Joe, I think is a brilliant thing because Samoa Joe is the one that beat him for the title on that night. And we all remember, if we were there, that we were not happy with how that show ended. So MJF putting that on Joe now adds severity and context to this year's World End. He went over after Hangman Page and took credit for being the most famous homegrown talent, the most successful homegrown talent in AEW, which cuts deep because that's something Hangman Page has wanted from the beginning and something that they've been working on with Hangman Page from the beginning. And then he gets to Swerve, brings up Top Dollar, brings up Diddy, brings up all this stuff. I have got to tell you, and there were some people, and I was like looking at like Twitter comments and stuff, and some people don't want this version of MJF. I do. I think that we're in need of OG MJF. I don't think MJF or AEW has been as successful as they were when MJF was original MJF. And I think that it's been a couple years now, which has made it so that MJF is still young. You know what I mean? He's still got many years in front of him. But the reality is he's not a kid anymore. And part of what made MJF at the beginning was that he was a spoiled kid. He was young. He's 23, 24, whatever he was. Now he's a man. And this is the man version of that young guy, of that version of MJF. And I think that this is the best version of MJF that AEW could possibly have based on that promo alone. I think they should put the title on MJF right away. I mean, in 2023, the whole world was talking about this dude. In 2023, remember the bidding war of 2023 or whatever it was, or 2022? Bidding war of 22, bidding war, whatever it was, when his contract was up. Everybody in the world was talking about MJF. He's one of the biggest stars in the industry. And I think that that's where you got to get him back to, because it's good for MJF, but it's also good for AEW. You know, and I think it's time. I think that a lot of people have had a lot of chances, a lot of opportunities, a lot of stories have been told. And now it's time to be like, okay, nothing has worked as well as old school MJF. So bring it back. The real heel. I don't need sociopath MJF. I don't need psycho, I'm going to tear you limb from limb. I'm going to set you on fire MJF. I want this MJF. I want the MJF back whose most dangerous weapon was a microphone. That's the best MJF to me. And look, MJF is great no matter what he's doing. But the best version of MJF is the one where the microphone is his most dangerous weapon. More than that diamond ring, more than a can of gasoline, more than a bag of thumbtacks. I would rather have MJF attack me with any of those things than stand across from him with a microphone. I think that's the most dangerous, best MJF, and that's where we need to get back to. Real quick before we get to emails, we have Austin Theory debuting as the Masked Man, which I think the two stories that I'm interested in seeing how they go further is Austin Theory as the Masked Man and the MFTs versus the Wyatts. For Austin Theory as the Masked Man, I think that it makes perfect sense that they waited until after War Games to reveal him, because I don't think it would have had a massive splash at War Games. But if you do it the night after John Cena, where you already have a big story, then you can let the reveal happen and now keep telling the story. So I'm sure we're going to get more into that this week. And MFTs versus the Wyatts, man, I would love to see. I didn't love the finish on SmackDown, that it just kind of ended in the schmaz finish. Solo refusing to stop bringing up Bray Wyatt is unbelievable. It's so good. And I think, man, I think you got to have the MFTs go on a run. The Wyatts will be fine. I think I want to see and I love the Wyatts. I love the Wyatt Six. I love horror movies. I love all of it. But the way everything is laid out right now, I got to see the MFTs kill the Wyatts. If the MFTs don't kill the Wyatts, I don't know what future the MFTs have. But if the MFTs kill the Wyatts, you can go all the way with them. Maybe not, but you know what I'm saying. Email in notsamwrestling@gmail.com. Notsamwrestling@gmail.com is our email address. Let's see. What do you guys have to say? Let's go to Tanner, who said, happy almost Rumble season, Sam. I can't believe it. I have so many ideas and thoughts swirling since we're almost in Rumble season and therefore on the road to WrestleMania, and I would like to get your thoughts. My biggest thought is about Gunther having a massive Mania match and how we get there. Personally, I feel like a Gunther-Brock spot in the Rumble gets us to Mania, but are we better served to have that be Brock's last match at SummerSlam? Maybe Gunther Styles at Mania. What do you think about Gunther's Mania plans? I think it could be a lot of things. Like I said, I think there's a world where he gets Cody. I think there's a world where he gets Cody. I think there's a world where you don't have the big Gunther match happen at WrestleMania. I think you can do Gunther versus Ilya Dragunov at WrestleMania. I think that that match was so good in NXT and NXT UK that you could, if you didn't want Gunther to get involved yet in some of the bigger stories, I think you can do Gunther versus Ilya and still be great. I think you could do Gunther versus Brock Lesnar, but this quick, Brock is still a pretty cemented heel. Gunther is the biggest heel that you've got. I mean, when are you going to turn Brock babyface and why? And if you're going to turn Brock babyface, don't you need a story to go along with Brock turning babyface? Are you going to turn Brock babyface against Gunther? You're going to have Gunther beating down somebody and Brock comes in and makes the save? Look, I'm never going to be mad at Gunther versus Brock, but I don't know, man. I kind of, it feels safe. Having Gunther do another retirement match at WrestleMania feels very safe and doesn't feel like you're shifting things. There are two ways to do Gunther. He's almost a sideshow to the main show, or he takes over the main show. And if you're asking, and you could do either way, but if you're asking me what would be a huge match for Gunther at WrestleMania, it would be a match that puts Gunther on the main show. It would be a match that makes you realize that Gunther is not just here to retire people that are leaving anyway. That Gunther is truly disruptive. If Gunther is truly going to be disruptive, he has to fight guys that aren't retiring. Let's go to Mark in Tarzana. He says he gives me one of these via email. Happy holidays to you and your family. Thank you. Thank you for another year of sharing your insight and wisdom on pro wrestling. Oh, thank you for listening. I want to also thank you for your response to my email a couple weeks ago when you referred to the type of wrestler I like as heartless ass kickers. Gave me a good laugh. I don't remember it, but I like a heartless ass kicker. But Sam, having been watching your Monday videos for a couple of years now, I've noted you don't really do any end of the year awards. You can give the winners a Sam Roberts action figure. I've come up with a list of categories. Oh boy. Best male wrestler of the year. You know what? Maybe I'll... should I do this next week? Should I actually give it some thought? Yeah, I'll do it next week. Let me forward this email to myself right now so I don't forget. And then I will do this next week. Because that'll be the last... Next week will actually be the last show of the year. So, okay. All right, Mark. All right, I'll do it. Let's go to Cody. Hey, Sam, I was thinking with WWE integrating some TNA stars onto the main roster, such as Joe Hendry and Leon Slater. Well, they didn't do that. I was thinking AJ Styles could face Leon Slater for the X Division title when TNA premieres on AMC, having Styles win, then defend the title against some WWE and TNA star. Yeah, I mean, I think AJ Styles versus Leon Slater is a match we all want. I would say WWE is not integrating TNA stars onto the main roster. Joe Hendry is an NXT star. He's signed. So that's that. And Leon Slater was at Saturday night's main event, but that was because it was an exhibition coming from NXT. So I think that might be putting the cart before the horse a little bit. But, yeah, I hope that TNA can get a deal to get AJ Styles in an X Division match with Leon Slater. I don't know that I want AJ Styles defending the X Division title against WWE and TNA. Like, that's a bit much. I would almost have Leon Slater, unless you're going to do a return match, dropping the title to Leon at WrestleMania. I think that's a lot. I don't know if you're giving up a WrestleMania slot to put the X Division, a TNA championship back on Leon Slater from AJ Styles at WrestleMania. I mean, I know you like TNA, but I feel like that would you would do that at Slammiversary, maybe, but not WrestleMania. I would like to see AJ Styles versus Leon Slater is the answer to your question. Let's go to Joe. Greetings, Sam. Hope all is well. It's incredible. As I was appreciating the legendary heat Gunther was receiving on Monday, it occurred to me that he is in a position to turn almost any heel that stands up to him babyface simply by being against him. Okay. I started theorizing potential future opponents, wondering who could possibly defeat a monster like Gunther. How about a beast? I wasn't initially sold on Brock versus Gunther, but then I remembered everything counts. You made a comment last week about whether Brock could turn babyface, and I believe that if he stood up to Gunther and was presented as a representative of all the legends from past generations, the audience would get behind him. I mean, listen, you could turn Brock babyface in a second. Brock has already been proven to be a great babyface, so, I'm not worried about that. He's also the last person to beat Cena prior to Gunther. No, he's not. Dominic Mysterio is the last person to beat Cena prior to Gunther. Dominic Mysterio beat him at Survivor Series. At the time, I thought it was interesting, seemingly random choice to have Brock beat Cena and then just move on from it with no follow-up. Well, you should have been listening to the podcast. I told you why that happened. Now I'm questioning whether it was part of a bigger story that leads to Brock to Gunther. No, I mean, it's just a matter of Brock being in a great position in 2026. Obviously, there's the Heyman of it all. Look, I'm just curious if you've given any more thought to the possibility of Brock versus Gunther. P.S. I enjoyed Cody rocking the final boss shades on SmackDown. Yeah, Cody's doing good stuff right now. Yeah, I mean, of course I've thought about Brock versus Gunther. And I think it'll happen. I think it'll happen. I don't know. Yeah, Cena doesn't have to have anything to do with it. I do think it'll happen, but, I think that there's still heat to pay off with Brock. You know what I mean? I don't think like turning Brock, you could just turn Brock babyface now, but it's almost like, I don't know, he hasn't done much as a heel other than beat John Cena and then go into War Games. I think that like Roman and Brock still, like there's still stuff to do, but maybe not. Avik writes in, how would you rate 2025 overall in WWE? I thought the year was okay at best, preferred 2024 and 2023. Well, look, 2023 and here's the thing. 2025 was really good. Like, I think that 2023 and 2024 were two of the best years in the history of WWE. And as we look back on those years, we can say now that, like, I mean, they were legendary. From WrestleMania 38 through WrestleMania 40 was some of the best WWE has ever been. And I think that 2025 is a victim of being compared to those years. I think if you compare 2025 to 2019, 2018, 2017, then you realize how good 2025 was. You know what I mean? I think to compare anything to some of the best it's ever been is not exactly fair. That's the trouble that Ruthless Aggression got into. In 02, in 03, in 04, it was being compared to 98, 99, and it's like, that's not like, you got to give us a second here. And so I think 2025 was not the best year ever, but I think it was a good year. And I think that it is compared unfairly to other years when in reality, you should take it into the full spectrum and realize that it was still really, really good. Steven writes in, I'm beginning to grow tired of seeing Drew McIntyre in title matches, not because I don't love Drew, but because I do. I think he can be such a great performer when given a storyline he can really sink his teeth into. See the CM Punk feud. However, I think they need to stop putting him in matches that he cannot win. We all can agree it's safe to say Cody's going to beat Drew and retain the title, which is fine, but my simple plea is that if you don't see Drew holding the title, please stop putting him in those matches. Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, I think that that's a little, it's a little too, I can't think of the word, but I can't just sit there and say don't do it anymore. Unless you've got a great story that you're going to tell in the match, I would agree with that. I want to see, and that's why I was saying I want to see Drew McIntyre win the title, even if it's just like a quick switch. Even if it's not like a long run. Giving Drew McIntyre the title and having Cody Rhodes beat him back for it would be a good thing. I think if you had given Drew the title at WrestlePalooza and had Cody win it back at, you know, I guess you couldn't do it at Saturday night's main event, but like, honestly, if you had done that, you wouldn't have been able to do the NXT thing. I mean, maybe you don't want to do it at Saturday night's main event because it wouldn't have been the main event of that show, but like, you can do it on a SmackDown or something. I think Drew holding the title in September, like coming out of September, October, November, just 2 months, and you could still end the year with Cody winning the title back. I think it would be a really good thing. I think if Drew, I'm going to say this every time. I think Drew should win the title. I think Drew should absolutely win the title and let Cody win it back. You know, like set something up where it's like Drew wins the title. Maybe Drew wins the title at Royal Rumble, or Drew wins the title at Day One Raw, or Drew wins the title at whatever. Like have Drew win that championship and then set it up so that at Elimination Chamber, you've got a story where somebody might win the chamber to face Drew, and it would make sense for WrestleMania, or Cody, and it would make sense for WrestleMania. Like have Cody win it back right before Mania, but have it be a thing where it's like you don't know if he's actually going to do it. Tyler writes in, hello, my podcast Tribal Chief. I'm a longtime listener, first-time emailer. Well, welcome. I hope you don't mind me speculating wildly and doing a little bit of fantasy booking. Well, I don't. I'd be hypocritical if I did. With Gunther now the top heel in WWE, I think it's time WWE went all the way with him and have him win the Rumble. And not only challenge Cody for the title, but win the Night 2 main event and become the dominant heel champion for babyfaces to chase. Clearly, I don't think that that's a terrible idea. You can do Roman versus Punk and give Braun the Lesnar match, which I think is still big-time matches. It's a bit of a risk to have the last image of WrestleMania be that of the crowd booing Gunther as he stands over Cody, but it's a risk that could pay off in the end. I think it's best to ride the momentum with Gunther, making Cena tap out. Just wondering your thoughts. Happy New Year to you and the family. Thank you very, very much, Tyler. I don't think it has to be night 2. I think it could be night 1, and you could have Roman winning in night 2 and still have your happy ending. But also, if you switched them, I'd be totally fine with it. Yeah, look, I also think that you could have Braun beat Punk and do Braun Breaker versus Roman Reigns. But Braun Breaker versus Brock Lesnar would be great, too. You know, you could do Braun Breaker versus Brock Lesnar, have Braun Breaker beat Brock Lesnar, and then have Brock Lesnar turn babyface after to kind of save him from that or something like that. You know, a heel versus heel, Braun versus Brock. Braun wins. Coming off of WrestleMania, Brock Lesnar turns babyface. Roman beats Punk. He's the world heavyweight champion. And Gunther beats Cody. There's a lot you could do there, man. There's a lot you could do. We're going to look into our crystal ball a lot more into 2026 next week. So make sure that you're here for it. Make sure you're subscribed across all audio platforms. The Cena pods will be dropping. The 2025 in review pods will be dropping. So much stuff. Happy holidays. Have a good one from all of us, which is mainly me here at Notsam Wrestling.